Imagine a ribbon of asphalt stitched across an entire continent, 8 lanes wide, running past deserts, mountains, cornfields, and skylines. From above, it looks ordinary, but it is, in truth, one of the most radical inventions of the modern age. The Interstate Highway doesn't just carry cars, it carries dreams. It carried young families out of cramped cities and into brand new suburbs. It carried freight trucks that filled the shelves of supermarkets. It carried teenagers to summer road trips, couples to honeymoon motels, soldiers returning home. In less than a single generation, the highway transformed America from a nation of towns and rails into a nation of mobility, re-engineering how we live, how we shop, how we travel, even how we fall in love. This is the story of the road that built us and the road that divided us. In this video, we're going to follow the asphalt thread that reshaped a nation. We'll begin with the roads that came before the interstates, dirt paths, main streets, and 2-lane highways that stitched towns together. Then we'll step into the vision of the 1950s, where Dwight D. Eisenhower and a team of planners imagined something far bigger. A national system that would touch every state, every city, every life. We'll explore how those highways didn't just move cars, but moved entire ways of living, creating the suburbs, hollowing out downtowns, and redrawing the map of American commerce. Truckers, fast food chains, motels, shopping malls, they all grew in the shadow of these roads. Along the way, we'll meet the engineers who designed the future, the politicians who fought over routes and funding, and the families whose homes were bulldozed in the name of progress. By the end, you'll never look at those familiar gray lanes the same way again. Because behind every mile of interstate lies a story of ambition, sacrifice, and transformation. Once upon a time, the American road was a local thing, a dirt lane winding past barns, a toll road that demanded a nickel at a wooden gate, a 2-lane highway that carried you from one small town to the next. Every journey felt intimate. A family drive meant passing fields, stopping at roadside diners, maybe waiting for a ferry to cross a river. The road wasn't endless. It had edges, pauses, and stories tucked along the way. Main Street was the true heart of travel and of community life. It was the commercial spine, grocers stacking apples in wooden crates, the shoe repairman tapping away behind a glass window, the cinema marquee glowing against the dusk. Everyone passed through Main Street, whether you came for Sunday church, Saturday groceries, or Friday night's picture show. Long-distance travel? That was another matter. Trains set the tempo, horse trails lingered, and bus routes traced the same rhythms as ferries and rails. Journeys were measured in days, not hours, in patience, not speed. America was mobile, yes, but the pace of life was deliberate, rooted in the cadence of local commerce and the slow rituals of travel. Roads connected places, but they had not yet reordered the map or the way people imagined distance itself. Two big forces intersected after World War II, and together they remade American mobility. First, cars were everywhere. Returning servicemen came home with wages and a want for normal life. Factories shifted back to consumer production. Suburbs sprang up where land was cheap, and the automobile made distance negotiable. Driving stopped being a luxury and became, for many, a way of life, a new freedom to set your own timetable instead of following a train. Second, geopolitics changed how policymakers looked at roads. Planners, who watched convoys strain over poor routes and who studied the speed of the autobahn, began to see highways as strategic infrastructure. The ability to move troops and materiel quickly, to evacuate cities if necessary, had clear national security value. Layer onto that an economic argument. Manufacturers and merchants wanted predictable, fast routes, so goods could move on schedule. Suddenly, the idea of a connected, high-speed grid felt less like convenience and more like economic power and civil resilience. Dwight D. Eisenhower's road to the interstate began long before the White House. In 1919, he took part in a coast-to-coast Army convoy that crawled across mud, ruts, and fragile bridges. A slow, exhausting trip that taught a blunt lesson. Moving men and machines across this vast country could be agonizingly slow. Later, watching the German Autobahn and managing wartime logistics, Eisenhower observed how high-quality roads made movement fast, predictable, and strategic. In 1956, he signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, launching a national program with astonishing scale. Planners spoke of thousands of miles and budgets in the billions, and they wrote federal standards to guarantee lane width, slope, and sightlines. This was not patchwork. It was a national design. Controlled access, standardized signs, and interchanges engineered for speed and safety. Politically, the highway was framed as both economic stimulus and civil defense. Better roads meant faster commerce and a quicker ability to move equipment if needed. Practically, it became the most ambitious peacetime public works program in living memory. A blueprint for modern mobility that would reshape landscapes, economies, and the daily rhythms of American life. Engineering the interstate was an achievement of scale, and also an exercise in collision. On paper, it was exact. Curves calculated for speed, grades set for heavy trucks, and bridges engineered to precise standards. In practice, it was messy, political, and deeply human. To build controlled access miles, you needed land. Governments used eminent domain to take rights of way. Fields and forests gave way to pavement, and whole city blocks could be excised in the name of progress. The federal government paid most of the bills, but local politics drew the lines. Planners sketched routes. Politicians lobbied for exits. Neighborhoods discovered that a single line on a map could alter property values, school funding, and life chances. Often, the cheapest alignment won, and those alignments frequently cut through poorer, politically vulnerable neighborhoods, while affluent areas were steered around. The bill was paid in dollars and in lives uprooted. Engineers optimized curves and sightlines. Politicians optimized votes. Communities optimized survival. The interstate was a technical triumph built on compromises, whose echoes are still visible in neighborhoods today. Where the interstate opened an exit, a new kind of town began to grow. Plots that once grew corn became parking lots. Pasture turned into cheap parcels for tract housing, and then into a parade of low, flat-roofed boxes, gas stations, strip malls, and discount stores. Suburbia offered something many Americans wanted: an affordable house, a yard, and a driveway with room for 2 cars. For families, it promised space, perceived safety, and a different kind of neighborhood life. Growth moved fast. Developers bought near interchanges, built cul-de-sacs and cookie-cutter homes, and centralized shopping into malls that replaced scattered Main Street retail. But there was a shadow. For downtowns that depended on passing trade, bypasses could be devastating. Customers who once strolled from store to store suddenly sped to the exit, grabbed what they needed and drove on. Storefronts emptied, movie houses closed. The small daily rituals, the cafe conversations, the barber's chair, the hardware store counter, went quiet in many towns. The interstate made winners of some and losers of others. It built modern suburbia and unlocked new economies, but it also left scars on urban cores, scars whose echoes we still feel today. The interstate didn't just move people, it moved whole economies. Almost overnight, long-haul trucking began to replace parts of rail freight. Manufacturers shipped point to point on schedules. Warehouse hubs rose near interchanges. Goods moved faster, and stores carried less inventory. Around every exit, a small economy sprouted. Pumps for fuel, plate for meals, and beds for the night. The classic post-war trio: pump, plate, bed. Fast food chains fit the exit model perfectly. Standardized menus, tight operations, and predictable taste from one state to the next. A single choreography in a kitchen translated into a nationwide promise. This was logistics made visible. Drivers became the backbone of a new rhythm. A night driver fueling up, a motel clerk handing over a key, a young worker sliding fries into a bag at 2 in the morning. The interstate rewired commerce. Distribution centers clustered by junctions, retail consolidated into plazas near exits, and towns learned to orient themselves around an exit number. In short, the highway didn't just carry traffic. It carried business models, livelihoods, and a new kind of convenience economy. Highways didn't just move bodies and goods, they moved stories. With the interstate came a new possibility: travel for pleasure, on a family timetable. Road trips became rites of passage. Maps folded over dashboards, trunks packed with coolers and suitcases, kids peering at a horizon of billboards and curious attractions. Vacation could mean a national park one year, a neon-lit motel the next, or a roadside oddity that stuck with you for a lifetime. The highway stitched together a popular culture. Diners, jukeboxes, and drive-in theaters created small, repeatable moments that showed up in music, postcards, and movies. Rock and roll and the highway found one another in songs about leaving, about the open road, and about becoming someone else for a weekend. For many Americans, the car became more than transport. It became independence, status, and a way to remake the self. But mobility also fed a myth, an open promise, that you could go and start over. It was liberating for some, complicated for others. The interstate made that promise visible. New places to visit, new markets to reach, new lives to imagine. It helped shape a national identity built around movement, equal parts aspiration, nostalgia, and the occasional roadside oddity. The interstate solved problems. It sped commerce, connected communities, and made cross-country travel routine. But every solution carried costs, and many of those costs only became visible decades later. Environmentally, the equation is stark. More paved miles produced more habitat fragmentation, more impervious surface, and more vehicle emissions. Rivers were rerouted for overpasses, wetlands were filled for ramps, and green corridors were severed. As driving became default, cities spread outward, and walking, transit, and compact urban life became harder to sustain. The social costs were no less stark. Routing decisions were rarely neutral. In many places, planners routed highways through politically marginalized neighborhoods, often communities of color, because those communities had less power to resist. The consequences were displacement, shuttered local businesses, and concentrated poverty, where mixed-use neighborhoods once stood. Economically, tax revenue followed population. Suburban growth captured retail and housing wealth. Many urban cores lost commercial tax bases, and that shift undermined schools and public services for those who remained. The interstate solved mobility, but in many places it deepened inequality and environmental strain. Today, planners, activists, and communities wrestle with these legacies, proposing caps, green decks, and more equitable planning processes. The lesson is clear. Infrastructure is not neutral. Roads are social policy in motion, and choices about where to build determine who benefits and who pays. Today, the highway is no longer only asphalt and signs. It's an evolving organism. GPS and advanced routing software now choreograph thousands of trucks every day, cutting delivery times and reducing empty miles. Logistics hubs and cross-dock centers have become the unseen engines of the economy, turning highways into data-driven arteries. At street level, our phones have repurposed lanes for the last mile. Ride apps, courier services, and e-commerce move people and parcels through the same lanes that once only carried cars. Cities are responding. Planners reclaim lanes for buses and bikes, pilot express transit corridors, and test caps or partial removals over depressed freeways. The debate has shifted. It's no longer only about speed, but about sustainability, equity, and resilience. New tools matter. Electric trucks and charging hubs promise cleaner freight. Smart signage and dynamic lanes promise better use of what we already have. The road of tomorrow may look less like continuous asphalt and more like a balanced network. Electric freight, frequent transit, safe bikeways, and greened caps. Designed to move communities forward, not just vehicles. The interstate was more than pavement. It was a national experiment in scale. a deliberate attempt to design a network that could support a modern economy and a culture built on mobility. In building it, we remade landscapes, rewired commerce, and reshaped daily life. The road stitched together regions, sped up markets, and made new kinds of communities possible. But infrastructure is never only engineering. It is a record of choices. The routes we drew reflected priorities: economic, political, and social. And those priorities helped determine who gained and who lost. Highways supported booming suburbs and national logistics, and at the same time they carved neighborhoods apart and shifted resources in ways we are still unpacking. Today, we stand at another turning point. The next generation of infrastructure will not be only wider lanes or faster speeds. It will be resilient grids that withstand storms, transit investments that expand accessibility, cleaner freight systems, and designs that aim to stitch communities back together. This is a chance to build roads that reflect the values we choose: sustainability, equity, and durable connection. So the question is not whether we will build roads, it is how we will build them. Will they bind us together or push some of us further apart? The answer will shape the map our children inherit.